got one letter from somebody out in Grand Falls asking who was the mad giggler on from 10 to 11.
Mary Walsh is an actor, director, activist, and comedian with a table full of Gemini Awards, 18 to be exact. A former member of Codco, a founding member of This Hour Has 22 Minutes. She's best known for her character Marg Delahunty, Princess Warrior, the queen of the ambush interview. We met in her home in St. John's, Newfoundland. Mary, there was the first time I came to the Maritimes, which was a very long time ago.
And this is not the Maritimes, just let me tell you.
That's what I was going to say.
Atlantic provinces.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for correcting.
Is that what you were going to say?
I was getting very close to that. You said in the Maritimes, but I think this is a phrase. I heard this phrase in the Maritimes, but I heard it repeated when I came to Newfoundland the first time. And I'd never heard it outside of Newfoundland or the Maritimes. And that term was the given child. I had never heard it. I had to ask somebody to tell me what it was. You were a given child.
Oh, I never, but yes, I was, but nobody ever called me that. It seems nicer than what happened to me.
Yeah,
but you know, abandoned child, I always thought of myself as, but it's true, and there was many of us, and in Inuit society, it's really common too, in all subsistence societies. It's fairly common, right? Because they're, it's like you have to have all these children, and then, they've got to be taken care of and fed and stuff, and sometimes you have to get other people to, Hillary Clinton famously said it takes a village to raise and so it was more hands-on villagers, really. But I grew up with my auntie and my two aunties and my uncle. Yeah.
But it wasn't far away from...
My parents lived next door.
Yeah, it was right next door.
Too bizarre.
Well, how bizarre was it?
Well, it was really bizarre, actually, because, we were sort of lace curtain Irish upstairs, very, very, proper and things, and always on our knees, constantly drowned in holy water, saying the rosary till our, jaws dropped off. And downstairs, they were drinking and fighting, and the Black Mariah was always called, people were always being, you know what I mean, and smashing up things. And so upstairs, which, we're always saying, oh my God, there's no good of giving them anything. All they know how to do is beat up and destroy, to which I would nod along. But knowing all the time that, of course, I was one of them. You know what I mean?
In reality,
I was one of them, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so, so I didn't, it was an uncomfortable, though I must say, my Aunt May and my Aunt Fee and my Uncle Jack, I owe them a debt of gratitude, and they gave me everything that they had to give and stuff, and...
but you knew that they were your aunt and uncle.
Yes, yeah, so I knew that
like
Mom and
It wasn't like
Dad
a Jack Nicholson thing where you suddenly discovered
No, I knew Mom and Dad lived downstairs. They moved when I was 11, which was all right. Then I went to visit them, spent more time with them, actually, when they moved up around the bay. But then some point when I was about 18, Mom and them, everybody in my family took off for Alberta, but nobody told me. That was really hard, because I knew they were going to Conception Harbour. But I had no idea they were going to Alberta. But, I wasn't really part of that family, but I have become very profoundly part of the family. But it took Mom and Dad dying to kind of do it. Yeah.
So how do you think that, well, obviously it affected how you turned out, but at the time, when you start going to school and things like that, when you talk about being lace curtain Irish and all very proper and drowning in holy water and everything, but it didn't take for you, did it?
It did for the first 8 years. Yeah. No, for the first, I'd say I kind of went bad. I guess when I was 11, and then I went up around the bay with Mom and Dad and them, you know what I mean? I kind of saw another kind of life that I was kind of interested in. And you know how much you just desperately long to be part of your family. And so I just wanted to be like them and not like them. I wanted to be like Mom and, our family. I wanted to be like our crowd, drinking and carousing and, staying out all night and, all that kind of stuff, which I took up with alacrity. Which is really a bad road to go down. But anyway, you make decisions. Here's the interesting thing. You make decisions when you're 14 that end up affecting you for the rest of your life. You say, this is the kind of person I'm going to be. I'm going to be, I'm going to drink too much. I'm going to be wild. I'm going to be... It's like, oh my God, well, you don't have a clue what you're doing. But some of us, I guess, have, the disease of addiction. And so that's it. You're screwed. I mean, 18, it's over. You're going only down one road. I mean, unless you manage to get off, of course. But, and all because, when you were in grade 9, you sort of thought, well, this would be a better way for me to go. I would be better off.
You got this job, you got a summer job at CBC Radio, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Lord, how many of us have started doing that? Okay, so first of all, how did you get it? I mean,
well, it was really, because I was definitely headed down a road. I was engaged to a guy from Denver, who from the American base in Argentia, and so I didn't even really like him very much, to tell you the truth. But I thought, what else was I going to do? Like I'd kind of gone off the rails, and I had a lot of ambition and no idea of what to do with it. I knew I wanted something, but I didn't know what it was. And I thought maybe if I married Bob Brownlee and moved to Boulder, Colorado, they would be all right. So I went down. He was being, shifted to Hawaii. So I went down to Colorado with him and met his family and everything. Pretty disastrous. But anyway, that all
You were how old at this point?
18.
18, okay.
So 17, 18. So that all came to naught, so I realized that I wasn't going to be a married person in Boulder. And so I went into a kind of a depression, really. I guess, maybe when you're 18, you're going... And I remember Aunt May, who wasn't very... she didn't believe in, the psychiatric arts or anything, but she said, I wonder, should you go see Dr. O'Brien, who was the psychiatrist then? And because, but then I was watching, Coronation Street, which I was addicted to at that time. That was 100 years ago, and it was still on. And they said they were doing auditions for somebody to be a summer replacement at CBC Radio. I have no idea why I went. And I was so sure I wouldn't get it that I did a really good audition. You know what I mean? I just didn't
didn't care.
Yeah. And so I got the job, and then that was the only good thing I did, actually, because then I completely was overwhelmed with, nerves, completely nerves, and didn't know anything, and didn't really know how to proceed, and didn't really have anybody who would help me to proceed. So I ended up, I think we only got one letter from somebody out in Grand Falls asking who was the mad giggler on from 10 to 11.
Well, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
Being called a mad giggler is not bad compared to some things.
Yeah.
But so did you get a taste then for some kind of performance by doing this? Was that the beginning?
Well, when I was on the air, actually, what happened was Dudley Cox, who was this guy, the English guy who was part of the amateur theatre scene in St. John's, was doing a kind of semi-professional, actually an amateur show, but he'd written it in the basement of the Arts and Culture Centre, and he liked my voice. So he called me at the radio station and asked me to be in this play. And really, that was the first play. And then I think I became then part of the Arts and Culture Centre Rats, who hung around, and for about 6 or 8 months I was in everything with the St. John's Players and stuff like that. And then Dudley and David Weiser started a semi-professional company. And so I went to work with Andy Jones and Kathy Jones.
This was the touring company? Was that
a touring company called the Newfoundland Travelling Theatre Company.
Yeah, okay.
And then I met all them.
Yeah. And you ended up at Ryerson at one point, right?
And I went to Ryerson at one point, and then we started Codco while I was at Ryerson. Because, the studying is a very slow process. And, and I was a much faster kind of person. I just couldn't believe it. Like, Sonia Smits was in my class. She went all the way through. She did 4 years. 4 months, I was just about out of my mind. But anyway...
but what was that shift like from you to suddenly to go from doing that in Newfoundland to suddenly you're in downtown Toronto going to Ryerson doing this? I mean, it's hard enough to get in. I know my son's in it, but I know how tough it is to get into that thing. Was it tough back then to get in?
Oh, yeah, it was tough to get in. And I was terrible. I did a terrible audition. But I guess that being older, like I was older than mostly everyone. I was 20. And everybody else was coming out of grade 13. And I'd already been working, in different things. And so I had some presence.
Yeah.
And so I remember the teachers had to come up and hold my hand while I did my classical piece. That's how bad I was. I really suffered very badly from nerves. Always have, and I suppose always will.
Really?
It's not as bad now.
Yeah.
But I got in anyway. All of us came up at the same time.
Yeah.
Greg Malone was already living there. Tommy, myself, Diane Olson, Kathy Jones, and Paul Sametz, and Tommy Sexton, all lived in the same place over in... it was the same then in Toronto as it is now. I remember our landlady explaining to us what electricity was, because we were from Newfoundland. Well, thank you very much. We had no idea.
It's an imponderable.
Yeah.
Electricity?
Anyway, so it was difficult, and we wanted to make friends. And I remember there were people across the street who we just admired so much. They were hippies. They lived in a commune across the street, and we didn't have the nerve, so we got really drunk one night and went over and threw up all over their house. It was... after that, we always went out the other door and went all the way up Spadina.
But you were in I think it's interesting that you were all there at the same time, so it was almost like you were this insular little support group.
We were, and we continue to be that.
Yeah.
You know, for each other, and to our detriment, and to our, you know, it was a double-edged sword, really. I mean, you know, we were always the gang looking out, and you know, closing ranks and stuff like that. Which really, I'm sure we must have had to go through it. But I remember the time that I remember going to a CBC launch without Codco. It must have been for This Hour is 22 Minutes,
right.
and I went by myself. And first I was terrified, and then I realized that, of course, you know, it's a very small country, and I knew everybody anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'd met them at different things, and I felt for the first time kind of included, and I think that was because, you know, I came out of that kind of...
that cocoon.
Yeah, that cocoon.
You did Cod and a Stick, which was the precursor to Codco forming, right?
We did Cod and a Stick, and that's when we formed Codco. Yeah.
And then that led to the Codco television show.
Years later. 86
okay,
by the time we...
Okay, but you did a lot of theater in between there. So
yes.
you're doing mostly theater, and then suddenly it's television. Which is
no,
a
I started in television. We started in television in '76. Myself, Greg Malone, and Mary White did something called the Root Cellar, and that's where the Wonderful Grand Band started. They were the house band. Mr. and Mrs. Budgell from Codco Theatre owned a bar, and they had a house band called the Wonderful Grand Band. We did 6 shows of that. Then I started in on television. The next thing was like in 1979 or something. I did... it was only on locally, but it was on nationally in the summer. I was an older boarding house mistress, Mrs. Ball. I forget the name of it, but Kevin Noble was in it, Janice Spence, Ray Guy. I forget the name of it, but we did that for years. It's like the slowest television ever made in the history of the world. It would take us a whole week to shoot a half an hour. Oh, it was like so boring. But anyway, it was Up at Hours. It was called Up at Hours.
Up at Hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but did you like the television experience? Was it? I mean, it's a different experience than the theatrical one.
Well, you know, people at that time thought that the television experience was a complete sellout, right? And and I got a lot of shit in different bars for being on television. And then I went and did a theater show. I went and directed Anne-Marie MacDonald's show at the Centaur. You know, that famous show she did, it's Shakespearean, and Good Night, Desdemona, Good Morning, Juliet.
Oh, yeah, okay, yes.
Governor
all I
General
could think of was Fall on Your Knees, but that was,
yeah, that's the book.
Sorry, yeah.
But anyway, this was a long time ago. And then I realized that it was, you know, $30 per ticket per person, plus parking was... And I realized that in actual fact, television was the inclusive, and theater was actually you know, the elite for the elite, and that I'd had the wrong end of the stick all the time, and you know, and I did like working in television, and again, television's very fast usually, except for Up at Hours, and so I love that. I love that kind of turnover. I love that you're going. You know, that voracity of television where you just have to keep producing. Yeah. It distracts you from, you know, having to deal with whatever those life things that... Now, tragically, I don't have a TV series, and I'm left to my own devices all day long.
I saw a quote from you once that you were, I think you were referring to somebody else, but something about, you know, you've had a TV series since you were born.
Yes, that's what my friend Christian said, a TV series since birth, apparently. But now not so much. Bound to happen, I suppose.
Tell me about the writing, though, because I'm curious about that. When did you actually start putting pen to paper and creating stuff out of your own head?
Well, I started writing for an alternate paper here. And that's what I always wanted to do, was be a journalist. Yeah. So that's why Up at Hours was a perfect... I got to pretend to be a journalist on TV. But I started writing, but comedy writing, of course, with Cod and a Stick. We wrote Cod and a Stick. Yeah. And even before Cod and a Stick, I think we did some writing. I may have done some writing with the Great Newfoundland History Show with the Mummers. But, you know, that was like 1970, two, or 1969, 1970. So I've been writing for a long time.
Did it come naturally to you, or was it something you had to work at?
I hate writing, and, you know, it's like somebody said to me, you're like a carpenter who hates the whole process and loves the table. I love the product. It's the greatest satisfaction. It's like, you know, when I hit it, but there's a carpenter here, I'm going to use some bad language, but named Paddy Mackey, who's a master carpenter, but he's in a rage all the time, like he made my cupboards, and he's like, you'd find Paddy up on the thing, flock, like... And that's the way I write. Fuck. Like, it's like I've got that rage. Sometimes I'm in a rage when I'm writing. I have no idea why.
And that's not over
So it's not
over the content. It's over the act of having
the
to
act
do
of
it.
writing, the act of trying to get that thin edge, the act of finding, like I've been working with Sherry White lately, and Sherry keeps saying, just keep writing, don't try to make it, just write, keep writing. So that's what I've been doing now.
Just let it all come out and then worry about afterwards.
Yeah. Whereas I have always written like to try to refine each thing as we go, right? And sometimes, it's like a knife edge, isn't it? The thing, and sometimes you'll actually hone it to that thing. That's wonderful. Yeah. But lately I haven't been doing that. I've just been writing.
Tell me about 22 Minutes, which is, that was, you were basically the
it was my idea.
It was your idea, right?
I had the idea because Donna Butt did so well here doing a show called Review every year. And remember Slob Ice? Oh, no, you don't remember that because that used to be here. But there used to be a show that went around the country. That was a political show. It was called something. It went all around the country. It came out of in the 60s. I used to go see it at the Arts and Culture Center. And obviously, we love that. We love political humor.
You're not talking
it's
about
the only thing.
Thaw,
Spring Thaw.
Bingo.
Yeah, and then there was something else called Ice or something. I don't know. And that kind of, we don't have any stars. We don't know. We're disparate. We're there's a huge landscape. We're cut off from each other, and all we have is the politics. That's what we all look towards. That's what we all know. We all know Stockwell Day. We all know Jean Chrétien. We all know Paul Martin. We all know Miss Scourges. Some better than others, tragically. So that's what brings us together, don't you think?
Sadly, yes.
Yes, and so to me, I was really, I know, but so what odds? Sadly, badly, I mean, what brings other people together? Spilling the fact that they spilled so much blood on, on that day, and so it's not a bad thing.
That's true.
And so
when you're doing that show, you knew what you wanted to do with that show. You knew what you were after when you.
Yeah, but I didn't exactly know how to go about it. Yeah, so that's what, I knew I wanted to do a kind of like because I'd been wanting to do it at the LSPU Hall for years, a Friday night show where we looked at the news of the week of just St. John's. Yeah. So, it just seemed, but at the time, how things just come together? It's like I took the idea to Michael Donovan, who had already been talking to Van Fitzan, who already was looking for a show that was like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then Rick Mercer was just doing theatrical shows with Gerald Lund's So-and-So Must Die. He'd done it all around the country, very funny. And, Kathy and I had just come out of Codco, and actually Andy Jones, too. I was hoping that Andy was going to be part. And Greg Toomey. And so, we all were kind of on the same road. I mean, not kind of on the same road. We all actually lived on the same road, and possibly related, maybe in some way, probably, and so it was easy enough for us to come together as a group. But we found a new way of working, I suppose, that we didn't have in Codco. In Codco, we just tortured each other endlessly, 24 hours a day. Whereas in this hour, because we had to do a weekly show, there were other people who made the decisions. Right. We did the writing. We didn't have the first year we had no writers except us. The second year we had one writer, Alan, and then we had him again for the third year, and we had one blonde wig, one wig and one writer, and so we started off very, but I feel that. Those were some great, that we produced some great stuff. And then we got some great writers, too. But then the process, the performers have gotten further and further away, except for Mark Critch, I think, who still is writing his own stuff. And I think you can see that he's sort of, Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the Marg Delahunty stuff is what everybody that knows you for. Right. And the ambushing of politicians and never letting them get a word in edgewise, which is brilliant.
Can you see where that would come from? Me, maybe that I would.
Well, yes, I can. But why did you? What made you think that this would be a good idea? I mean, first of all, the breastplate and everything is obviously your way of distancing Mary Walsh, the person, from what's going on when you're dealing with these very real people who don't know what the hell is going on.
Right.
But did you plan on doing it that way right from the beginning?
I don't know. I mean, first I thought, wow, I look like that woman who does Xena, Princess Warrior. We should do a stand-up of that. And then I think it was Jeff Jeff Dion, who was our road producer, who said, yeah, you could, but why don't we, I think Jeff may have said, I can't remember now, but I said, look, I look like Xena, let's do a skit. He said, well, let's take it on the road. And so then Patty Parsons, who's brilliant, made this suit that I still have with the gold glue. And then we did it. And, I had been trying to ambush people before. I'd gone after, the guy who wrote the thing about war. He's
Could
famous.
You narrow it down?
Oh, come on. He's the war expert. He's the Canadian war expert. He's actually from here.
Gwyn Dyer.
Thank you. I went after Gwyn Dyer one night as myself, and I dressed up as, and I had my makeup on, and, I looked pretty good, and I found I just wanted to, I was ashamed. You know what I mean? He just said something to me, he went blah, 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 or something, and I got ashamed, and I had no strength to go forward. But as Marg, I was already so deeply ashamed, being up in Ottawa in that stupid suit with the plastic sword and the bad makeup. Where was I going?
Yeah.
There was only up from there, right? I would suffer the indignity and the shame of being with all these people in their Burberry things, all waiting for the thing and sneaking in and all those things. And then I thought, well, I had nothing to lose. So I think for me, that was the thing that made it all right for me, because I had nothing to lose, so I could just go ahead, say the thing, get it over with, and get out of there.
I got to ask you about the Stephen Harper kiss, because everybody said you got to ask about the Stephen Harper kiss.
I know.
And we'd love to run a clip of it while we're doing this, but the CBC charges too damn much money. But it's all available on YouTube, and we'll tell people that right now.
Yeah.
But it looks, you watch that thing, and it might. Were you freaked out by it? Because it's kind of creepy to watch.
I know. No, I wasn't freaked out by it, because at that time, I realize now that I actually was telling him exactly what would work if he only would listen. If he'd only listen to me, he'd be, he would be in the majority now. But I'm freaked out by how much I go on before it. That's the only thing that freaks me out.
Because he looked like he was kissing you back. That was what was creepy.
He was kissing me back. But he couldn't do anything else, really, because I had him in a death grip. Just let me hold your hand.
Hey?
You see how when I hold on, and I was very, very nervous. So I was using his head as to get me through the thing, because I had to remember all the, so there was nothing he could do, really. And I don't remember, because I can't remember. I just remember being so relieved when it was over and putting on extra orange lipstick so he would be covered with orange lipstick when I was done.
Now you were in St. John's, and I
never get to see him anymore.
Well, nobody ever gets to see him.
No,
anymore.
I know. I wonder, did I do some desperate harm there? But no, I don't think so. I think he was an asshole long before I kissed him.
I want to take us outside, because we're in St. John's, and there's just there are nice things to look at out there. Because there are other things I want to ask you about this place and its effect on you. So can we go outside?
Yes, sure,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So when I said let's go outside because it looks nice, I totally forgot that we were in Newfoundland. And when you step outside, it looks nice, and then you step outside.
Well, it's that time of the year.
Yeah.
The spring. We don't actually get a spring.
Yeah.
So, and everybody's heart is all ready for spring because they read those poems by Wordsworth and all that crowd. But we just don't get that. We don't have spring. We have 3 seasons.
So obviously, for anybody who goes into the line of work that you've gone into, the sense of place, where you're from, it informs what you become.
Right.
But I've always thought that there are some places that would inform people a lot more than other places. Like I come from the Ottawa Valley. It doesn't really inform me a lot.
I thought the Ottawa Valley informed people a lot.
Okay.
Because you guys are basically the same stuff as us, aren't you? Irish,
that's
English,
true.
jigs.
Yeah.
Written, didn't.
But there's something about this. Yeah, there's something about
the face
this
on the barroom floor. Old Doc Brown has moved upstairs,
okay,
et cetera.
knock it off.
Go ahead.
So, but you know what I'm asking you? I mean, this as well as the childhood that we talked about, the fact that you're from this place and that there's something very unique about this place has to have made you, in large part, what you are too.
Absolutely. And of course, not having had a family or feeling that I didn't have a family, Newfoundland has, people in Newfoundland may not want me to be saying that they're my family, but I've always felt, that 19th century sense of place, breathes there a man with soul so dead who never says to himself and said, this is my home, my native land. It isn't a popular emotion anymore, but we have that. And it's just like a little extra added thing we have in our heart. We have a love of place, and that's what we have. have for this place. And once we did Hatching, Matching, and Dispatching and this show that was kind of funny, really funny, I think, but maybe a little outrageous, and people were really angry about it in Newfoundland. And so they got on open line and said all kinds of mean things about me and everything. And I went, oh, I'm really mad, you know, at Newfoundland. And right away, as soon as I said it, I began to feel like, oh, be careful, be careful. Because, you know, Newfoundland really, with not having had a real mother, though I had one, but she was absent, Newfoundland is, this is going to sound so corny, like Newfoundland is my mother. And I felt like, oh, well, so she says the odd bad thing. Yeah. What odds? I mean, she's kept me going these 57 years and nurtured and, you know, gave me a place to be and a sense of, gave me an extra added glom of love in my heart for, you know.
I'm curious about when you talk about people having that bad reaction.
Love,
glom sounds, it's better than glob.
Glob of love. Yeah.
When you're talking about people criticizing you, and there are like the pajama people out there on the internet, you know, I mean, the internet now is a place where people will eviscerate you over just about anything.
Yes.
And and I've seen some of the stuff that people have said about you, and it's just horrific.
Oh, really?
And you mentioned
I haven't seen it, thank God.
I have some in my pocket, but I'm not going to take it out because I don't think that you should.
I did check out some things after I did the Stephen Harper thing.
Yeah.
And people called me a whore.
That's
unbelievable. And I thought that was ridiculous. Just because I didn't particularly think that his blue, sweater vest was convincing didn't mean I was a whore. You know, like, where did whore come from?
No, but this is what I think is interesting.
Wrong, maybe wrong.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation about the fact that you have nerves, and you say you still do to this day, though a lot less.
Yes. Yeah.
But I would think that is aggravated. That sense of having nerves about what you do for a living is only exacerbated by people who shoot that kind of criticism at you. I mean, you've managed to overcome it, I'm assuming. You've managed to ignore those.
Well, you know, the thing is, I suppose, you know, when you do, like, I find that I wasn't that aware until I did that thing on the internet, and then I looked at it. I wasn't aware that people... I really lived in a bubble, a stupid bubble, where I thought, gee, people really like me. Because people always say, hi, Mary, how are you? We love your Marg Delahunty. I think,
well, they never say those things to your face. They would never say that. That's why they're the pajama people. They're
that's why I don't now look. But I did for 2 whole days, and I felt like hanging myself, really. It was at a time when things were difficult in my life anyway, and things weren't going that well, and I thought everything in my life is a complete failure, and everybody hates me, and thinks I'm a whore. But I suppose, you know, there are whores I like. There are whores I like. I mean, there's not that, you know, but they call me an ugly, old, stupid, you know, disease-ridden whore or something. I mean, it was really horrendous.
It's horrible. Yeah, it is. It's god-awful stuff.
So somebody said, just don't read that.
Yes.
And I thought, well, that's the truth. Why I'm not going to anymore.
Yeah. And I want to ask you just finally, then we'll get out of this wind. My sense is that you're just not ever going to stop doing what you're doing. You seem to be as full of energy now.
They try to stop me, but I won't let them. No, I don't want to stop. I mean, I enjoy what I do, so I really want to do it. But I find, you know, I have to. I don't know. I don't know what road I'm going down. I've got a couple of ideas for talk shows and things that I'm floating, and I'm doing Marg the movie Marg, about Marg, and you know, which will involve fiction and truth. You know, in a good mix of fiction and truth. But I don't really know where I'm going, you know? But I'm not stopping.
Good.
Yeah. But maybe I should stop like you, and then they'd ask me to come back at double the salary.
That's right.
That's it.
Oh, no, the double salary thing doesn't work out. Because you come crawling back, it's half the work and half the salary, but still.
Right. But that's what Steve, what's his name, who used to do the Red Green Show, said that was the Canadian idea of a raise, was half the work. That's really, they didn't care about the money, just half the work.
Thanks for talking to us, Mary.
Thank you.
This has been great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Great. Bye-bye.